And welcome back to the Herbert Dennard Show. We are talking housing, and we're talking more housing. And who we have here is Kelvin Dubose. Welcome.
Thank you.
And John Hiscox. John is from the Macon Housing Authority. You've been there how long?
Long enough that if I'd shot somebody instead, I'd probably be out by now, 26 years.
And you've been at EOC?
Economic and Community Development. I've been there 2.5 years and hoping to make my 3rd year there.
Okay. Tell us about, this is Fair Housing Month, but I think every day it should be Fair Housing Day.
Yeah.
Every year. So tell us what's going on with Fair Housing Month.
You are correct. This is Fair Housing Month, and this year is a special year because it's the 40th anniversary of Dr. King's death. And you know the fair housing legislation was passed within days of his assassination. And so this is the 40th anniversary. And what fair housing is about, and we all know that you can't discriminate against a person because of religion, because of familial status, because of disabilities. But what you may not know is that John and I both are required to affirmatively further fair housing because we are recipients of federal funds. And so, we have a plan to do that, and I'm sure John does as well. And what we try to do is to promote and educate. We are sponsoring Home First Fair Housing Conference, where all service providers from across the state will be here on tomorrow discussing fair housing and how we can advance that mission.
You cannot, it's illegal to discriminate against the person because of his race, color,
race, creed, color, sex, national origin, disability, familial status, and a few more.
A few more.
And a few more.
Those are the major protected classes. And, and there are some new paradigms in fair housing, one of which is quid pro quo. That is starting to be something that is
what is that?
Prosecuted. That's where a landlord may want some services for late rent or something like that. There have been more cases in the last 5 years, particularly in college towns, things like that, and that's something that fair housing advocates are looking for more and more these days.
Do you run into many people that do not want somebody to move there, move in their apartments, or move in any place because of their race, creed, color, religion, etc.? Is that still going on?
It's alive and well.
It's alive
and well. No, it hadn't died. And as racial prejudice and other kinds of prejudice in our society haven't died. But it's dramatically different than it would have been a few decades ago. And the paradox of it is, in most parts of the South, including the Old South like Macon, it's in some ways easier than it is in some northern areas. Chicago and Boston come to mind. I've got a colleague who wound up the head of a fair housing agency in Chicago, and he, not in the city of Chicago, but in a fairly well-known suburb of Chicago, town of about 50,000 people, and he was processing dozens of legal action fair housing complaints every week. So in some ways, yeah, prejudice is alive and well, discrimination is alive and well, but in some ways we've made more progress than some other parts of the country. Of course, it's not just limited to the old-fashioned refusal to rent or refusal to sell, but sometimes discrimination can be more subtle. It can involve things like, okay, I'm willing to sell, but not at the same price, or not at the same terms. It can even include things like mortgage terms or even insurance terms.
Let's suppose,
that sort of thing as well.
Either one of you could answer this. Let's suppose a person has been victimized. He's been discriminated against. What can and what should he do?
The first thing they can do, they can call a variety of local service providers, including the Macon Housing Authority or the City of Macon. You can call Home First, and we will try to help them best as we can. But if there is something that needs to be investigated, we will refer them to the Human Rights Commission in Atlanta, and they have jurisdiction in this area. But let me go back and also tag onto that question about what type of discrimination is more commonplace today. I also want to mention discrimination against persons with disabilities. One of the things that I'm very proud of the Macon Housing Authority, they're leading by example. Their new developments are 100% accessible and 100% visitable. We see that where, you know, apartment complexes and other venues don't want to go that extra mile.
So what you're saying is that people that have apartments and places like that, they should have a ramp or something so a person that is in a wheelchair should be able to get up there?
Well, it's law now that
But a lot of places don't have
a
it.
certain amount of units must be accessible.
When you're building new units, you're required to build in a percentage that are accessible, and also you're required to build in units that are specially adapted for people with hearing disabilities or visual disabilities and that sort of thing. But there's not a lot in the way of requirements about existing housing. There's nothing that requires somebody who owns an apartment complex that was built in 1955 to go in and make all these changes. Not so much under Fair Housing Law, but under disability, the Americans with Disabilities Act, so they may be required to make reasonable accommodation and that sort of thing.